Hello and welcome to this basic setup video for Ballistics version 2. Right here I've got just a basic test scene with a play controller which you can move around and jump. And currently we cannot shoot anything. And so the first step would be to add a weapon component to your weapons. And you can find it here under Ballistics, and then here's the weapon component. And inside of this weapon component, we first have to define the two spawn points. I've already mentioned this in the introduction video. We have the bullet spawn point, where the actual ballistic trajectory starts and the collision detection starts. And this is usually at the center of the camera, so we assign the camera here. And the z-axis of the transform assigned here is used as the shooting direction as default, so this is fine for our use case here. And as the visual spawn point, so where the bullet should be instantiated, or the visual appearance of the bullet should be rendered, we set this to the tip of the barrel, and I've created a empty game object here already. So we can assign this to the visual spawn point. Now the visual bullet provider we'll get into a bit later, but this generally defines how our bullets will look, and if we leave this empty, we won't see any bullet representation. And the bullet info defines the physical properties of our bullet. And to create one, we can just click Create, Ballistics, and Bullet Info. And here you can see we have like a speed, the mass of the bullet, the diameter, and drag coefficients, which is used for the air resistance force. And then we have some other information like the damage system, which can be accessed when we hit something to calculate the damage applied. A hit mask, so which layers we want to hit, and the impact handler we'll get into later, and how long our bullet will live. And here we also see that at the initial shooting of the bullet, it has a kinetic energy of 625 joules. So when we increase the initial speed of the bullet to, for example, 600, now our initial energy is 900 joules. And you might have already seen these unit selections here. And here you can select between metric and imperial measurement systems, so we can instead define the speed as feet per second, but I'm more accustomed to meters per second. So we have created this bullet info object. We can now assign it to our weapon. And you already see this inspector piece here. It's the feature of bullet ballistics, which you can see in many other places, but just a convenient function. So you mustn't always go into the asset to edit the properties, but you can edit them directly from inside of the weapon component. So as a next step, we have to actually shoot something, and we do this in our example inside of the player controller. And first of all, we have to include bullet ballistics. We do this with using ballistics. And then we need a field for our weapon component. And then we basically just check inside of the update that when we hit the left mouse button, we call the shoot method on the weapon component. And this will just do the default firing inside of the z direction of the bullet spawn point, but we can theoretically also define the direction here, and we have some other overloads, but the most basic overload is fine for us for now. And with this done, we can go back to Unity. and assign our weapon here. And if we hit play, you see that we don't see anything. And this is because we did not assign any a visual bullet to our weapons. We haven't set up any bullet interaction so far. And to add some visual bullets, we can create a visual bullet provider. We also do it under create ballistics visual bullet providers, and we have two options here currently. A pooled bullet provider and a tracer bullet provider. The pooled bullet provider just instantiates a prefab and pools it. And so I've already created a bullet prefab in the example scene, which comes with the asset. And I just have to find it. Here's the model, and here's the prefab. It's just a mesh with a pooled bullet with trail component. This just inherits from pooled bullet, and when using a trail renderer and we pool it, we have to reset it each time the object rearracks from the pool. So on the initial bullet function method, we clear the trail. Yes, so we can assign this bullet prefab inside of our visual bullet provider. Just organize this here in the example bullet provider. Start again. So perfect. And now we can assign this bullet provider to our weapon. You can also see an inspector here again. And you see it's very fast, but we can shoot now. And we can reduce the speed to something like 40. And now you can probably see the bullet better. But we also currently don't have any interactions with the environment. And yeah, we don't see much. And so the next step, we can define our ballistics environment with a ballistic settings object. We create one under create ballistic settings. And we can define some properties of the environment, but this should be fine mostly. The temperature is currently wrong. B1 to fix the units here. And then to bind this ballistic settings object to our scene, we create a environment provider. And this environment provider simply initializes the core ballistics update loop with the settings we define here on loading of the scene. So we can now put this ballistic settings object in here. It will be applied. And here we also have the option to define an impact handler, ballistic material, and wind velocity. I'll get into this in more detail later. So now when we start, we should basically see what we've seen before. And if, for example, we enable debug paths here, and just minimize this, you can see that we have like a debug information about the bullet trajectory. Okay, so apart from the basic weapon input, so you can shoot directly, but bullet ballistics also provides like a convenience wrapper, which is the weapon controller. And the weapon controller can handle more advanced weapon styles. So when we assign a weapon here, we can currently even single shot, and for example, we can switch it to full auto and say we have a shoot delay of 0.5, so 0.15 seconds between each shot. And here we have to define, like, or can define two controllers. For example, we can have a spread controller and assign it here. And here we can define for each bullet the angle at which it deflects. So we can define like spray patterns similar to Cisco. For example, the first bullet has like a horizontal deflection of 0. The second we can add like a horizontal deflection of 0.5 degrees. And then the second has negative 0.5 degrees. And so you can create spray patterns here. And this is just the horizontal deflection, and here's the vertical deflection. So maybe the vertical deflection should go up over time. And yeah, that's already assigned. And now to shoot using the weapon controller instead of the weapon, we have to go back to the player controller. And now instead of accessing the weapon directly, we instead get a reference to a weapon controller. And the weapon controller doesn't have a shoot method, but instead we can set the trigger to be held or not held, depending on the left mouse button. And with this change, when we reassign the weapon controller, should now have a full auto weapon. So I hope you can see I'm clicking once and it keeps shooting. And instead of the full auto mode, we can, for example, change it to shotgun mode. And now we shoot 8 bullets for each single click. And because they are all currently perfectly on top of each other, you can see that, yeah, they appear as one bullet, but they're actually multiple. And this error is just some Unity problem with the animation curves inside of the spread controller. Okay, now to the input interaction handling. So currently these are just colliders and don't have any information for the ballistic system. So ballistics doesn't really know what to do with it. And to add interactions, we want to create ballistic materials. And so we're going to create ballistics, ballistic material. Now we have a new ballistic material. A ballistic material is basically just a physics material from Unity with an associated ballistic material. And we can specify some information here, physical interaction properties, like the energy loss per unit. So we've seen inside of the bullet that our bullet has a kinetic energy of 4 joules. And if we increase this back up to like 600, we have 900 joules. And our energy loss per unit of the material is currently 1000. Set this to 800. We should be able to basically through 1 unit of this material. The spread defines the deflection angle of the bullet trajectory after entering the material, so maybe 1 degree. We have an impact handler to do stuff like bullet holes, impact sounds, or anything, something like this. And we also have this ricochet probability. So a ricochet is basically the bullet being reflected by the material instead of penetrating it. And this left value here is the ricochet probability when shooting head-on to an surface. And this right value here is the probability of a ricochet when shooting at a very shallow angle. And so currently when shooting head-on, the probability is 0 of a ricochet. And when shooting from the side, it's 10%. And the percentage of energy conserved after the ricochet is between 70 and 80%. You can define them by moving this around. And so to assign a ballistics material to a object, we just have to assign the associated physics material to the collider. And now this collider here should have physical properties, and we should be able to reflect bullets off of it. So you see sometimes the bullets reflect off it, and you can shoot through the collider. So this one example of a ballistic material. We have a few more ballistic materials in our project currently because of the example scene. And you can see here on the window Ballistics Material browser, we have an overview over all the ballistic materials currently in the project. It's just a convenience for accessing all of the materials and changing properties. And so to the impact handling. This, for the purpose, we can create an impact handler. And for example, similar to the visual build provider, we have this pooled build provider. Here in the impact handlers, we have the pooled impact handler. So this basically just generates an impact object prefab at the impact position. And in example scene, I again have some impact handlers here. And for example, here's an dirt impact prefab. And this impact object just plays a sound and starts this hit particle system. And we can use these hit impact objects in our example impact object and assign it here. And we can say that this impact handler handles particles and bullet holes, but an audio. So to get into a bit more detail here, we have each impact can be handled by up to 3 impact handlers. So we have an impact handler for each bullet. So you can define a impact handler here. Then we have an impact handler for each material, and in our case we want to assign our newly created impact handler here. So each time we have an interaction with this material, this impact handler will be called. The third option is inside of the environment provider, we can create a global impact handler, which we'll apply for each interaction. And these impact handlers are called one after the other, from the bullet impact handler first, then the material impact handler, and then the global impact handler. And each of these handlers can define what it has already handled, so the particles, audio, or anything. And then depending on what the other handlers have already handled, the handlers below it can decide not to do particle handling again. So we can have like special particles when shooting with a special bullet, and then the material particles don't get emitted anymore. Okay, but so we have assigned this impact handler to our material now. So when we hit it, now we can see particles and bullet holes are created. You can also see that the particles are created on the backside, and you can see the bullet holes on the backside. Okay, and another thing, we have here this rigid body, and currently when we shoot it, nothing happens. And this is not only because we don't have the ballistic material assigned here, so if we assign it, it still won't work. And this is because the force applying the force is also handled by an impact handler, and we currently haven't set up anyone. And this is usually done by creating a impact handler, generic impact handler. Inside of here we can check that it should handle rigid body forces. And the usual go-to would be to assign this rigid body impact handler to the environment provider global impact handler. So this impact handler is applied to any interaction. And now when we shoot these here, we should see that rigid body forces are applied. Okay, yeah, and we can also define a default ballistic material here. So currently this material, this collider has our new ballistic material applied in this collider, but all other colliders in the scene, which currently only the floor here, doesn't have a ballistic material applied, and it would be very annoying to apply a ballistic material to all colliders in your scene. And so we can apply a default ballistic material to all other colliders which don't have a ballistic material applied. And this can be done here. So we can assign one of the other materials I've defined in the example scene. So for example, the ricochet material, which has a 100% probability of a ricochet. And so now, even though we haven't applied a ballistic material to the floor directly, all bullets which collide with the floor will ricochet off the floor, and our other materials still work as expected. Yes, that's basically all of the main features. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask them. And also check out the documentation. I will link it below, which has a bit more in detail information about some of the topics I've mentioned here. Apart from this, thanks for watching and have a great day.